Okay, time for another video. All right, so in a previous video, the power to overcome, I talked about where that power comes from. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, it talks about how when God created man, or when he was getting ready to create man, he said, let us create man and give him in our image, and give him power, which is dominion, over the fish of the sea, the fowls of the air, the animals of the ground, and every creeping thing. Then in Mark 11:22 to 24, it talks about how you need to speak to those mountains, or how you need to speak to that disease, to that sickness, and then you can overcome it. But sometimes when we do those things, still we aren't healed. But then sometimes we don't do those things because of some things that's happening within us, our belief systems, the way we work, the way we think we are, and then we don't get that healing. So let me introduce you to Naaman. Naaman is going to help us understand one reason why he didn't get his healing. Now, if you know the story of Naaman, Naaman is in the 2 Kings chapter 5, verses 1 through 14. So now first let's understand who Naaman was. Naaman was the commander of the Syrian army. Now, a commander has great respect. He has great power. When he speaks, people just do things. You don't question him. You don't ask him. You just do. But Naaman was also a very respected person. He must have been a really, really nice person and respected his servants as well. Because even the king of Syria said that Naaman was an honorable man, that he was a mighty man of valor. So Naaman must have been a guy who could fight, teach you how to fight, support you, encourage you. I can see him being that kind of man. Unfortunately, Naaman also had leprosy. Now, the Bible doesn't really describe what leprosy is, but it must have been something visible, because it's something on the skin, and we'll talk about what that looks like a little bit later on. But his servants that helped him, that went with him, that followed him every day, they could see how this leprosy was affecting him. It was probably very painful. It probably left some kind of scars. It probably left him feeling like he was unworthy at times, and things like that. So, but because of his leprosy, sometimes he was probably too tired to go out and fight, or too tired to make those kinds of decisions. But then one day when they were out, doing one of their wars, they brought back a slave girl from Israel. And this slave girl became the servant of Naaman's wife. And one day, I don't know, kind of out of the blue, the Bible doesn't really say how long she was there, but one day the servant girl said, if you were in Israel, there's a prophet in Israel that can heal you of your leprosy. Well, Naaman, he never questioned the girl. At least the Bible doesn't say this, but I can see, imagine yourself in this kind of a fly on the wall, listening to this conversation. Naaman never questioned the girl. He never asked who the guy was. He never questioned, where did he come from? What can he do? How can he do those things? Naaman took a beeline and he went straight to the king of Syria. Now, remember, the king of Syria had great respect for Naaman, and Naaman had great respect for the king of Syria, I can imagine, as well. And so Naaman said to the king of Syria, hey, the servant girl told me about this prophet, this guy back in Israel that can heal me of my leprosy. Well, the king of Syria, he never missed a beat. He was like, bet, you go. And here, I'm going to send a letter. You give this letter to the king of Israel. Let him know who you are and that I have sent you as well. So Naaman said, awesome. He packed himself up. He packed up his servants. He took all kinds of gold and silver and bronze and fine clothing as gifts for this prophet who was going to heal him of leprosy. And they were on their way to Israel. So they get there and they go straight to the king of Israel, and they give him the letter that his king Syria, the king of Syria, had written for him. But the king of Israel was like, what? I can't heal anybody. There's no healing. He said, am I God that I can heal you? So I thought that was funny. But the person who could do the healing was Elisha. So this was during Elisha's time. So Elisha got word that this guy was in town, and he heard that Elisha could heal him. So Elisha let the king of Israel know, hey, go ahead and send him on over to me, and I'll get him healed. And so the king of Israel told Naaman who the prophet was and where to go. Again, Naaman never argued with the man. Again, at least this is not recorded in the word. But he never argued with him. He never said anything. He just said, okay, which way do I go? And him and his servants took a beeline over to Elisha's home. So they get there, and Elisha sent out a messenger. The messenger came out to Naaman and said, hey, this is what Elisha says. This is what the prophet says you have to do. Go on over there to the river Jordan, wash yourself 7 times, and you'll be clean. Naaman is like, what? Now, this is the first time during this whole process that Naaman reacted. He said, what? Who are you? How come the prophet himself didn't come out and tell me what to do and give me instructions? Does he know who I am? I am the commander of the Syrian army. I have defeated all kinds of wars. I have won this war, won that war. Do you know who I am? So this is when we get to see the pride that had engulfed Naaman and who he really was. He was so upset and so perturbed that he thought he went away outraged that Elisha, the peasant, didn't even come out to greet him. And then he sends some peasant servant to come out to give him instructions. Oh, no. So Naaman goes away mad. He goes away outraged. And then he says, now, at least he could have told me to wash in the much cleaner waters of Damascus. He told me to wash in the river Jordan, that muddy, dirty, murky place. So now what's wrong with the river Jordan? Well, I looked it up, and I found 2 scriptures that I thought was most important that talked about the river Jordan. First was in Genesis chapter 13, verse 10. During that time, this is when Lot and Abraham were parting ways. They had accumulated so much stuff. They had so many animals. They had so many servants. They had so many people that the place that they were in was getting overcrowded. So Abraham said, all right, it's time for us to separate because we can't all live in the same place. So Abraham said to Lot, look around, whichever way you go, I'm going to go the opposite way or the other way. So Lot said, okay. He looked around and he said, wow, look at the places near the valley of the plain of Jordan. So he went over to that area because he said he could see how healthy it was. And it was healthy because of the water and the nutrients that was coming from the river Jordan. Another situation, it was during Joshua's time. This was one of his first things he did as the leader. So in Joshua chapter 3, verses 15 to 17, just like the Red Sea. So you remember the story about the Red Sea when the Israelites walked across the Red Sea. Well, this is something similar because they were ready now. The Israelites were ready to go over to their promised land, which was Canaan. But in order to get there, they had to cross the River Jordan. Well, by this time, the River Jordan was overflowing and they couldn't get across. So what God told him to do is put the tabernacle in the water, in the River Jordan. And when that happened, the water subsided. So the water came down, and then the people were able to cross the River Jordan to their promised land. So there's also in the New Testament, which I thought was interesting, there's also what happened was the River Jordan is also the place where John the Baptist baptized Jesus Christ. Now that was a considerable amount of time after Naaman, but it kind of shows the importance of the River Jordan. But the previous times were from the Old Testament, and it shows how important that the River Jordan was. So getting back to Naaman, so Naaman was like, no, I'm not going to no dirty water. There's no way in the world that this dirty water could help me and get me clean. So he was on his way back home. Meanwhile, his servants walked up to him. Now, I'm sure his servants had much respect for him. And they also experienced, because Naaman's sickness did not just affect him. It affected everyone around him. They could see the pain that he was in. They could see how it made him feel. They could see how, how he was come down and not good on some days when the pain was probably messing with him, or a little bit worse on some days than it was on others. And because of the respect that the servants had for Naaman, and because they were engulfed in his issues as well, they wanted him to see how this couldn't hurt. It couldn't hurt for you to just go ahead and do what the messenger said, because the message actually came from the prophet. It didn't really come from the messenger. So his servant said to him, Father. The King James Version calls him Father. Now, just saying that right there shows how much respect that the servants had for him. It also shows how much Naaman cared about his servants, enough for him to listen. So the servants was like, how bad could it be? How worse could it be? If you just go, if he had told you to do something great and grand, if he had told you to go wash in the Damascus, the cleaner waters of Damascus, just because they were better, does it mean that it would not have worked? What can we lose? Now, that's qualisology, so that's just me kind of interpreting the conversation between his servants and Naaman. But this is a time when, again, Naaman, he never argued. He didn't come back. He didn't retort. He swallowed his pride. And he followed the instructions of the messenger, because it was the message that was more important, not the messenger. And so when he did that, he went on to the River Jordan, and he got into the water, and he dipped himself 7 times. And when he came up on that 7th time, he was completely and totally clean, completely and totally healed. The Bible says that his skin was like the skin of a child. Naaman could not believe it. So because he swallowed his pride, he got healed. Because of the prejudice he had against now the prophet Elisha, he became healed. And he didn't stop there. He went back to Elisha, and he gave, or tried to give, Elisha all of the bronze and the silver and the gold and the fine clothes that he had brought with him. Very fine, very great gifts. Elisha wouldn't accept, but he went back to say thank you and to show Elisha that this is what happened, that he did get healed following those instructions. So, what can we learn from Naaman? Well, sometimes if we didn't get our healing, if we didn't get healed and we've been praying and we've been doing this and we've been doing that, there's lots of reasons why people don't get healed. But in this particular situation, Naaman had to swallow his pride. He had to overcome his prejudice. And most importantly, all he had to do was follow the instructions. He was given simple, specific instructions. And all he had to do was go to the River Jordan, wash himself 7 times, and he would be healed. So, is someone telling you to do something and your pride has overcome that? Have you read something in the Bible that just seems so simple that, is this it? You're questioning it. Is this it? That's all I have to do? And you just didn't do it? Did you hear a teaching and that teaching said to do such and such and so, and you didn't do it? And then you wonder, hey, why am I not healed? Because the Bible says that by his stripes we were healed. And that is past tense. So, what's the moral of the story? Just do it. Be a Naaman. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.